Hi, my name is Dave Reske, CEO of Now Speed Marketing, and welcome to this edition of Marketing in the Now, where we talk about the best ideas in digital marketing. And my guest today is Tami Spencer. She's a fractional CMO and founder of Sweet Marketing, where she helps brands tell their story in a way that people actually want to listen. She spent years blending strategy, creative, and systems to help businesses move from marketing chaos to clear, consistent communication with a confident brand voice. Tami, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. I'm happy to be here.
I've been thinking a lot about this conversation because you and I have been talking about brand voice, and I think this is a topic that many people don't really understand and are really confused about. And,
Yeah.
branding and getting your voice clear is just so important. And when we hear it in a powerful way, with brands like Apple, we kind of get it and is excited, but it's really hard for a lot of people to get their arms around it and really make sense of it. So, you know, what do you mean? Let's just start with helping our listeners understand what do we mean when we talk about brand voice? What is that really all about?
Yeah, so brand voice, what I mean by that is creating a consistent tone and messaging where everything that you are producing as a company is clear and consistent and congruent throughout the market. So that starts as far back as figuring out who you are as a company. What are your values that you want to reflect as a brand? When people think of your brand, what do you want them to think of? There's all those formative steps that hopefully the companies that you're working with in a marketing standpoint have gone through. If not, you kind of have to take them back to square one and be like, okay, wait, let's define who you are as a company. And there's a lot of tools that I use to do that. It's giving them a list of 60 attributes and saying, hey, circle the 10 things on this list that you think define your brand or that you think people think of or feel when they hear your brand messaging. And then, let's look at what you're doing and see, is that message that you're putting out, is that marketing that you're producing, is that content actually reflecting these characteristics? And then you have to get nuanced with the tone. Is it appropriate to be humorous? Are you witty? Are you dry? Is this a serious, we need to be intentional and serious every time in our voice, coming up with all of those nuances and creating a package that says this is who we are and this is how we communicate with our customer. So I think that is kind of the step one of brand voice.
Yeah, it sounds really powerful when you put it together. Let's just unpack those things kind of one step at a time
Sure.
for our listeners. So the first part you talked about was just trying to figure out who you are and what you stand for. Is that something that most entrepreneurs or most marketing executives or most business leaders they kind of know intuitively? Like when you start an engagement or you're working, with a new client, do they kind of know that off the top of their head, or do they need a lot of work to kind of figure out who they are and what they stand for? How do you get
Yeah,
to the essence of that?
I would say it's maybe a 50-50 mix of you have that entrepreneur that you're working with who's maybe 5 years into their business and they have a very good grasp. They've kind of figured out who they are, they know what they want to reflect. I think the more likely situation than them just having no idea who they are is that what they're saying is not communicating those things that they think that they are.
Hmm.
So I think that's what I run into more often is like, the entrepreneur has a very strong or CEO has a strong idea of what those values are, but their brand voice, their messaging, their communication is not necessarily aligning well with those values. And they haven't really seen how that connects to everything they're putting out. I think one of the things that I think, and I don't want to step on any marketers' toes because I know that's our audience here, but I think that marketers forget that, the most important thing for a campaign or a company or messaging is not that it be unique. and catchy and like stand out. That's not unimportant, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that it's clear
Hmm.
and it's easy and understandable. So I think that that's one of those things that it's like, hey, are we saying this in the way that the customer's not having to try to figure out what we mean? Because I think when businesses focus too much on who they are and trying to communicate that through their messaging, you lose your customer because your customer doesn't care very much about your story, right? They care about their story and how you're going to help them accomplish what they're wanting to accomplish through purchasing your product or through, through hiring you and your services. How are you going to solve this problem that I have? Now, they might care a little bit about your company values and your company's mission and why you founded your company. There are definitely some great examples of where that was an important part of the marketing plan. Um, but I would say the vast majority of clients or customers really want to know, how are you going to help me?
Yeah.
How are you going to step in and how are you going to fix this problem that I have?
And that makes a lot of sense. But I feel like many entrepreneurs get that wrong. I'll use an embarrassing example, or maybe it's a good example. I don't know. So a few years ago, I thought about, the book Start with Why, and
Yeah.
we've all heard about that, and you find your why, and my why now is, but I really wanted to change the world and make an impact on the lives of people, right? So it's kind of this big idea. So I defined our messaging around we want to change the world, and I forget exactly what the brand message, but it was around that. And I realized it took me years to realize that customers really cared about, we're a digital agency building their sales pipeline, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
like
Right. Make me money.
exactly. They kind of really
Yeah.
cared about that. So they were like, "Yeah, you want to change the world, Dave? That's nice. But really, or the reason we're hiring you and actually paying you money is so that we can make money because that's how I keep my job and
Yeah.
I don't get fired by the board and all of that other stuff. So, what do you do when you're engaged with an entrepreneur or a business leader and they're kind of going in the wrong direction? They're kind of maybe going into something too lofty, like I was, or into a
Yeah.
direction that you don't think that their customers care about. Is it about research? Is it about focus groups? Is it about interviews? Like, how do you get to the essence of what their customers really care about?
Yeah. I think that so much of marketing is really just logical, right? It's really when you think about how people think and how people interact with commerce and um how people interact in the market. There's just a lot of basic human logic to that. And so I do feel like if you can clearly explain that, like, hey, I love your dreams. I love your goals. These are very good things for you as a company internally to hold on to and to keep in the back of your mind. But when we are communicating your brand with a customer, and the hope is making that connection with a customer, making that sale, getting that contract, getting that client, we have to reframe to what they want. So I think explaining that to an executive who's going in the wrong direction and then giving them practical examples of, if we take this campaign that you've been doing and we just change it in this one way, and this is our messaging, and this is the direction we go in, it refocuses that energy that you're putting on knowing who you are and who your company is, and it puts it on understanding how you are going to help and solve a problem for this other customer. Then we will get that return on investment with this marketing plan. We will move forward in the direction. We will create that sales pipeline that you're hoping to actually build. Um, I think kind of giving them that practical example of where, hey, we're not trying to change who you are. We're not trying to get you to forget about changing the world. That is important, right? We all as humans care about making an impact, building something that matters. We want that. Um, But as consumers, we're not as focused on that most of the time. So I think kind of just helping use that logic and then giving them a practical example of how you can make a small change that has a big impact on the effect to the customer.
I love it. And then, the really helping them be very clear about what that impact is, and then
Yeah,
getting that message down so that they can understand it, so that you can use that for marketing purposes. So, but if we're really clear, let's say you're a plumber and you want to grow your plumbing business, and you are very clear that what you do is plumbing, right? So
right. Yeah.
you maybe you do HVAC, right? So there's the functional clear, and then there's the idea of differentiation in marketing. So how do
Right.
you kind of get the messaging and the brand voice? How do you kind of merge the I want to be very clear about what we do and who we are and who we serve, and and then add the differentiation to kind of make it clear why you should choose me, and how does that kind of come into the brand voice?
Yeah, so one thing I think is interesting, a commercial that I love right now, you mentioned Apple earlier. I mean, obviously they're killing it, right? They're doing a good job. But there's a Google commercial. Have you seen the Vanilla Pro commercial?
No.
Okay, so this is my favorite ad on TV right now. Everybody is walking around holding a vanilla ice cream cone. And there's a banner that rolls down that says introducing Vanilla Pro 17. It doesn't have an Apple logo, it doesn't have anything, but we all know what they're talking about, right? Because
Yeah.
Apple has very great branding. So this banner rolls down. Everybody's walking around with their ice cream cones. They are smashing their ice cream cones on pay portals. They are looking at their ice cream cones as they're on the train. They're just, they're holding their ice cream cones. And then you get to this woman in a flower market who's holding up her Google Pixel phone and asking their Google AI which flowers will last the longest or not, which of these flowers should I pick for to still be beautiful in 2 weeks or whatever. And the AI answers, and it's the be different in a world full of vanilla, be different. And so I do think um there is that aspect of how does if I hit buy now, if I click subscribe, if I hire this person, how will that make me feel at the end of the day? So how does it solve my problem, and then how is it going to make me feel about that? And I think that's where the marketing pro and the professional marketing, that's where you set yourself apart in your messaging and in your voice, is creating that not only am I going to solve this problem, but but you're going to feel this way after after you make this purchase. So you're going to be different. You're going to be set apart. You're going to be uniquely equipped to handle life in a different way. That's the Google message, or that's their tone and their voice that they're using in this commercial. Um, and is that what, that's their customer base, right? Their customer base is the person who doesn't want to be a part of the pack. I mean, I literally know I have friends that will not ever buy an Apple because they don't want to be a blue bubble. They want to be a green bubble. They want to be different. They want to set out. They want everybody to know they don't have an iPhone. And so that's their client, that's their customer, is that person that wants to feel different. And they shaped this campaign with the voice of you're going to feel set apart and also these other benefits that you're going to have. And that was, I just think that's a powerful example. When you're talking about a plumber, you're going back to your example of you got a plumber, um, you know, taking on all of the crap in your life so you don't have to. That kind of, I'm going to solve this problem for you, and you're going to feel great about the fact that you don't have to worry about this ever again. You never have to worry about if you're it's something we don't want to have to think about. We don't want to have to think about the fact if our plumbing is working correctly. We just want to turn on the water and everything runs smoothly and our cups fill with clear, clean water. So
Right.
taking that from just this is what I can solve for you, but this is how you're going to feel about it. I'm going to take away that burden. I'm going to take away that anxiety. I'm going to set you apart. I'm going to make you happy. So I think that human experience aspect of it is where you can set yourself apart. And that's also, bringing AI into the picture. I think we know AI is a invaluable tool that we can use, but it can't create human experience. It can't duplicate or come up with human experience. So I think that's another way to set yourself apart in a kind of chatbot volume world that we're living in and that's growing. It's the connection of the feeling and the human experience that you can bring into that
Yeah, and
voice.
that sounds really powerful. So, I may have mentioned I teach a course at Boston College on business
Yeah.
planning, and one of the exercises I take my students through is looking at a customer's key purchase criteria and then evaluating, the company that they're designing or running a business plan for against their competitors and looking for those things. And I think what you said is very powerful because key purchase criteria, we often think about it as hard facts. Like we make decisions based on facts. I want to hire a plumber based on price or convenience or speed or experience, right? So these are maybe key purchase criteria. But there's also, what you brought is really the emotional side of it. How does that plumber make me feel? And I realized the plumber that I use, this guy Chris, he just makes me feel great every time he comes in. I have this like
Yeah.
respect for him. He shows up on exactly when he always calls me back. He always um his price is exactly what he quoted. It's this kind of this aura of trust and respect. And so when I write him this check at more than my billing rate, right? I feel great.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so rather than feeling ripped off, I feel great. And so it's that I think that what you said is, connecting, making sure that we understand the emotional connection and the factual, maybe logical connection of the key purchase criteria and building that all together into a brand voice. But that's all kind of the nuts and bolts of it. But how does it
Right.
come down? How do you bring it back to the tagline and a campaign and making it all feel like one integrated piece? Because one of the things you said earlier is you do an audit of your client's existing brand voice and kind of show
Yeah.
them maybe the inconsistencies they've got. And I presume at the end, once you get the essence of what it should be, you want to put it all together in your campaign. How does that feel, when you get the whole campaign together with an integrated again brand
Yeah,
voice?
I think it feels light is how it feels because you have a very clear framework that you're working from when you start at square one and you get all of those things aligned. You know what tone you want to be in, you know who your customer is and how you want to communicate with them. You know exactly what you're offering and you know exactly who you're offering it to. Um, it's pretty easy from there, when I have this framework, it's pretty easy to plug in messaging for someone who thinks in that way, right? For a marketer, for a marketing team to kind of be like, oh, okay, we're going in the direction of let's go back to your plumber example. There's a company I know that they specialize in the female plumbers,
Hmm.
and their whole voice and brand is, hey, it's usually a woman who's hiring this work done in
Hmm.
her home, and she's the one who's going to be there when this person shows up. And we're offering, it's a female, you can be comfortable. You don't need to be uncomfortable with a man you don't know coming into your home. It's kind of
Hmm.
that tone of providing easy, comfortable service that it is unique, right, in the market that there's a female plumber. That's not uh as typical, I would
Yep.
I would say. I'm sure there's data to support that. I'm not just not just stereotyping. But I think once you figure out, okay, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to communicate it. Building that framework to me is the most essential part of the marketing process. And that's what I love is strategy and branding. And building that voice and giving you 15 different messaging things that are all very clear and very concise and in your consistent voice, so that anytime we hear whatever that is, we know that is associated with, oh, that's women plumbers. That's Apple. Oh, that's Google. These things, companies that are highly successful, we recognize instantly, even without their logo, even without their color schemes. I think the whole that going back to the Vanilla Pro, I mean, when the banner rolls down, all it says is Vanilla Pro. And it is a white banner with black writing, and you absolutely know 100% that's Apple, right? Because they've built this brand voice. They know who they are. And even their competitors obviously understand exactly their brand voice and who they are and can replicate it in their commercials. So yeah, I think that's kind of the essence of all of it, is the framework.
So you go through this framework, you put together the brand strategy, and you've got the messaging right. Talk to me about the tone, because the brand voice does require a tone. So, and obviously
Absolutely.
Apple has a good tone, but if you're, a bank, or you're a plumber, or you're a tech company or software company, you know, a lot of clients that we work with forget about the tone part. They kind of still focus on the logical part and the
Yeah.
messaging. And so, how do you think about the tone, and how does that kind of get conveyed in audio, visual, graphics, words
Right.
throughout a campaign, or throughout, through a marketing?
Well, so I always rely heavily on a storytelling mentality,
Mm.
because we talk about it as professional marketers. This is our 40-hour a week job, or 60 or 80 or whatever it is. But we have 40-hour eyes on this project, and you're going to get your client or your customer for 4 seconds, right? You get 4 seconds to for them to identify, understand, and interpret what you're doing. And so I kind of go back to what engages people to stay with me. What is going to make them listen to what I have to say? And it is more of that storytelling format in the tone. And you as a company, and this is where we go back to who do you think you are? What's your identity? What characteristics define you? We need to figure out what your story is. Is your story uh humorous? Is your story, do you capture people with quick wit and funny? Is that how they engage with your brand? Is your story, and in a bank example, is it trust? Is it reliability? Is it um those things are going to take a tone that is more direct and intent and focused.
Hmm.
We're going to show you that we're trustworthy. Is it expertise? Is that your tone? That I am the absolute best person in this field, and you can believe that for this. And you have to tell that story in a way that focuses on the customer. So that's how you create, tone can be a lot of things, and you can be a plumber and decide your tone is funny and witty, and we're going to go that direction. I think the key to all of that is consistency, right? Like, I don't want to write one funny ad or campaign that's talking about how we're going to take on all life's crap for you or whatever,
Right.
and kind of go that direction, and then turn around and talk about, you can trust us because we have this many years of experience, and we have this and this, and go the expertise and serious route, right? I want to create consistency across all of my messaging. So if I've decided that what I'm going to be is the funny plumber, then I'm going to put up a giant billboard that conveys that makes people laugh, that makes people, or at least go, oh, haha, I can't believe they said that on that billboard. um it's just about consistency. You can pick any tone that you want, and I think it's very nuanced too. Well, not nuanced, I think there's not a million different ways you can go, but I think you have to decide which of those tones, what tone creates that perception of who you are and that character quality that you want to represent, and then be consistent with it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you've got to be consistent. We just have a few minutes left, and I just want to talk about the business benefits of this. So, how do
sure.
you know if it's working, and how do you kind of measure what's the business impact? Let's say you've been going to market the old-fashioned way. You've got salespeople out there. You're doing a little marketing here and there. Maybe could be a lot of businesses, and then you get an epiphany. They hire you. You do the brand voice. It all comes together, feels light and easy. How do they know if it's working? What are the business measures or the business ways that they can tell if they've got it right with the brand voice?
I mean, obviously, eventually you want it to be revenue, right? You want to see an increase in revenue. You want to see an increase in sales. You want to see an increase in interactions from customers clicking on that email campaign that you sent, clicking. I mean, I'm talking clicks, but that's generally how we're doing business these days, or phone calls, calling you, wanting to know more about, hey, I heard you do this. I really need somebody to do that for me. Like, can we meet and talk? So hopefully eventually it is that upkick in revenue. I think in the initial, marketing takes time. Building a brand voice takes time. You can't do it in a single campaign typically, because you have created this one voice, but they don't know that you're going to have that voice in the next one. So there's a little bit of time and building on each campaign. But I think the the recognition of who you are in your brand when you're interacting with people, even when you're trying to hire, when you are outside of just the sales part of it, when you're hiring somebody and they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of your company. Oh yeah, I know this about it. And focus groups can be a great way to evaluate that in kind of early stages to see, what do you think? What did you think have you seen this? What did you think when you saw it? How did it make you feel? And that's a good, like, okay, we achieved what we were trying to achieve with that tone, with that voice, with that messaging. Um, so focus groups can be really helpful, but I think just interacting with people who have been exposed to the brand and seeing more interaction or more recognition, more awareness, or more of a click, I get what you do, and I understand what you're trying to, and I'm interested in that. I want to know more about that. If you say things in the right way, uh, the minimal reaction that you should get is, huh, I want to know more about that.
Yeah.
You don't want to ever see anybody's eyes glaze over or like, let me look for somebody else in the room to go talk to. That's the minimal reaction you can get when you create your voice in the right way, and when you're saying things in the right way. It's interesting. People want to know more.
Yeah, very, very powerful. I love what you said before. It just makes things light, and I think it makes it easy. And I think ultimately it's going to lower your cost of marketing, right? Because
Yeah.
everything you do is going to work harder for you because you've got that consistent brand voice. So
Yeah.
very powerful.
It's repeatable. You can build those systems that, create some of their own speed and momentum going forward without as much constant overaction and reach when you have that framework to build from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
Tammy, we're out of time, but this has
Okay.
been a great conversation about brand voice. Thank you very much for sharing some ideas. Really
Absolutely.
great
Thanks
ideas.
for having me on.
Sure. If people want to connect with you, learn more about you, and maybe continue this conversation, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Tami Spencer on LinkedIn, and then I'm on Instagram, at Sweet CMO. So either of those are a great way to connect with me.
Awesome. Well, great conversation. Thanks again for taking the time.
Awesome. Thanks, David.